Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Women's Sports Matter podcast. My name is Gianna Castro, and I am your host. Today, we are going to be talking about a very, very touchy subject for many people. We are going to be talking about the Senate's hearings about how the FBI mishandled the allegations of abuse about Larry Nassar, the four gymnasts that went to testify in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee yesterday. So this episode will go up on Tuesday, so last Wednesday. And the gymnasts that went to testify in this hearing are Raisman, Simone, Biles, McKayla, Maroney, and Maggie, Nichols. And I will be watching this 4-hour-long video. I did not have a chance to watch it yesterday. I was at school, and frankly, I didn't even know it happened until, I got home and was scrolling through Twitter. But I'm going to watch it, and I'm going to pause the video every now and then to talk and give my thoughts, because this is something that, the FBI screwed up big time, and these women deserve justice, and all I want to do is give them hugs. They have gone through so much hell, and I think we need to keep talking about this and talking about them and just show them our love, basically. These women deserve the world, and the fact that something like this was allowed to happen is so unbelievable and disgusting. So without further ado, it's time to pause this recording and to watch, and I will jump in and out with my thoughts. Here's something that I'm noticing as I'm watching the opening remarks from Senator Dick Durbin from Illinois, my state, and Chuck Grassley of Iowa. They're both denouncing what has happened here, saying this is awful. I'm sorry if it sounds like I'm being sarcastic. I'm not. I'm just trying to explain it. This is the way I talk. I'm sorry. And they both blamed the FBI, and they wondered why the FBI didn't disclose this stuff to them. And it seems like the FBI done effed up, which they did badly. I'm not making a joke out of this, but both senators are saying that they really screwed up, and they're apologizing for that. So I'm gonna jump out and listen to the rest of this. After 40 minutes of senators talking, doing their opening remarks, it's finally time to hear from the actual athletes themselves. I have no idea what's going to be said. I've seen little blurbs of what Raisman said and what Simone Biles said, but I'm just looking forward to hearing more in depth about this situation. This is something that I particularly have not done research in, unfortunately. I don't know why I haven't. But this is something that, I feel like I'll be jumping in more to talk about stuff. But it is now time to hear from the athletes, so I'm going to jump out again and listen to what they have to say. After watching over 2 hours of the video of the testimonies from the four U.S. gymnastics teammates, I am left speechless, heartbroken, and drained. Even though I have never experienced anything like this before, the way that they described their interactions with that terrible person, just it makes me, I don't know, like, it makes me scared. I feel scared. I feel like the way that they described it made me feel like that I was experiencing it too with them. McKayla Maroney, her testimony today, or from the other day, if you have not listened to it, please do. She's the one who explained within the most graphic details her abuse from when she was a child. All of these happened to them when they were children. Sexually abused kids. I talking about this makes me want to cry, and I feel like so emotional right now thinking about this. I'm gonna stop for a second. I wish that I could go up to everyone, especially the 4 that testified in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and give them a hug and thank them, for their courage and for being a voice for the voiceless. They became the person that they wanted to see advocate for them, which is unfortunate at the same time, but I'm glad that they became these people that were willing to talk about this kind of stuff. Again, I sat through 2 hours worth of this, 2 hours and 7 minutes worth of it, listening to the graphic details, listening to them answer the questions from the senators. The fact that the FBI was working in tandem with the USA Gymnastics and United States Olympic and Paralympic committees. It's just, this whole situation is awful. There's probably a better way to describe, a better word than awful. But it's so bad, and the United States fucked up. There's no other word to use than fucked up. Yeah, I'm using the F-bomb. Sorry, family. The United States fucked up. And it makes me mad. I'm pissed. I'm sure they're pissed. I'm sure the 300 women and girls that were assaulted by this doctor, they're hurt. They're scarred for life, suffering from PTSD, becoming emotionally drained. And this guy, I'm gonna stop again. Give me a second. To quote McKayla Maroney from her testimony, she said that Nassar turned out to be more of a pedophile than he was a doctor. And her testimony, if you haven't seen it, please go watch. Her describing her experiences and criticizing Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco. She's tired. All of them are tired. All of them are emotionally drained, and the fact that they had the courage to do what they did is phenomenal. And of course, the FBI director Christopher Wray apologized. Other things that happened within this is a Raisman said that the FBI made her feel her abuse didn't count. McKayla Maroney also said something along the lines of that, but now she said that therapy made her realized that her abuse was bad, and it did matter. All they wanted was for someone to do the right thing, and that never happened. And she also said that the people that were a part of the FBI and the people that were a part of the investigation were stepping down or retiring and then being compensated for that because they were being a part of this investigation. But if you want to read more about this, I'm getting my sources from NPR. The name of the article is Gymnasts Blast the FBI's Mishandling of Their Allegations about Larry Nassar. And there's a bunch more articles like this, but I'm kind of done with the reading of the articles for right now. Sexual assault, any kind of assault, abuse is never okay. Especially for these women who had experienced these things when they were like 11 years old. You're 11 years old, you're being drugged, you're being raped, you're being used by a pedophile. It's so unacceptable. And there's probably a better word for that one too. It's not right. And this man cannot get away with this. He needs to be federally prosecuted. The people that were a part of this, whether they were in the FBI and they falsified McKayla Maroney's testimony from back when she was first interviewed by the FBI, all of them need to be federally prosecuted. It's never easy for one to hear and sit through things like this where you have people talk about abuse, the sexual assault, domestic violence, things like that. This is a very touchy subject for me and some of my friends, and I'm assuming some of my classmates that I don't even know their personal lives, but I'm sure that, everyone somehow, some way is unfortunately knows someone that has gone through something like this. It's not okay. And if I can keep myself together, I would like to share my story. In no way am I trying to drag the whole point of this episode, attention away from the whole point of this episode. The whole point of this episode is to talk briefly, I guess, before I cry, about the Senate hearing with the 4 USA gymnasts. But I also want to talk about my story and why this really hits close to home with me. Because I if I see something like this, I have to talk about it. So, first of all, I'm 19. I feel like a lot of people forget that in terms of when they listen to this episode. So, I would just like to say I'm 19. I'm a college sophomore. I'm not an adult. Well, I am an adult. But, I'm not 30 years old and this is what I do. I'm still fairly young. And when I turned 18, I'm going to read something. But when I turned 18, I finally got to be able to cut off ties with my dad. And the reason that I wanted to cut off ties with him is, first, he's an asshole. Second of all, he's a terrible father. And third of all, he abused me when I was younger. And I I understand where, these women are coming from that were testifying, because a man of power abused them and a man of power abused me. So I'm just going to read what I wrote. So August of last year, I posted a thing, because I'm chaotic and I wanted justice for something that had been causing pain in my life for so long. I just dealing with a lot of emotions last year at this time, with my grandfather dying recently and my dad pulling stupid shit for no reason. I wanted him fired from his job. So what did I do? I sent an email to his work, and I made a post on Instagram, and I'm going to read you my post from August of last year. Before I turned 18, I looked forward to doing two things: voting and cutting ties with most of my dad's side of the family. Instead of siding with three people who at one point had to move out of their own home for months, they continued to side with an alcoholic police officer who couldn't even protect his own family in the times that they needed him the most. I've seen this thing going around recently saying, "What radicalized you?" A lot recently. I have a few things. First, my dad being pulled over for speeding and not getting a ticket because he showed the police officer his badge. I hate qualified immunity, but hey, it gets worse. The second thing is being abused by my father when I was younger. The fact that I tried to tell adults what was happening and then not being believed was scary. I was devastated, and it felt like I was the one making things up. Things were said like, "Oh, he didn't do that to you," or "It's because you weren't behaving and that's just regular parenting." Last time I checked, being dragged across the ground, being slapped multiple times while he was driving a car, and being thrown against the wall and being hit doesn't sound like regular parenting to me. The last thing that radicalized me was being forced to leave my house at least 3 times with my family because my father was drunk and called the cops on us because we were trying to help him. He called domestic verbal on us twice because he didn't like that we called him drunk. Twice. He believed that since he was a cop, he can do whatever he wants and he won't get in trouble. That's completely wrong and stops today. Anyway, when we left the house the third time, I spent a half an hour driving to school. This happened when I was a senior in high school. It's been 2 years, basically, since then, a year and a half. Half an hour every school day. My sister had to be dropped off at our bus stop. It feels like complaining a little bit, but it was real rough for us until my mom kicked my dad out of our house. That's when we finally felt safe again. All these hardships we went through shaped me more into the person that I needed to be for other people. That night, when the cops came, before the cops came, my dad shoved my sister while he was drunk before they got there. He crossed the line. He didn't get in trouble for anything that he's done. He didn't get in trouble for that. And I want to change that. He doesn't deserve to be a cop. He's a coward. He hit his own children, and yet his job as a cop is to be a protector of the people. I don't think so. Then I went on to say that I made a petition for the place that he works. Then I go on to say a child abuser should not be a cop. My father is not the person he used to be. He needs help, and I still believe that he needs help. After not interacting with him for a year and a half, I still believe that he needs help. And then I posted it on my account, and the amount of love that I received from strangers was something that I never expected to happen for me. When I can remember from when I was at least in the 3rd grade of being hit by my dad. And eventually my sister ended up being hit as well. One second. When I was a freshman in high school, it was right before the winter break, I decided that after seeing my dad once again throw my sister against the wall, hit her, make her cry because she didn't listen to him, I locked myself in my room and I decided that moment on that I wasn't going to sit around and let it happen. It was 5 years ago. I went to the social worker, or the school counselor at my school, and I reported him, and which he reported to the DCFS. The DCFS didn't do anything because I didn't have anything on my body, but that was my sister that was hurt, or hit, and I've reported him 3 times since then. He is a terrible man who was in a position of power, and I just want to say that I know how these people feel. And sharing our stories is so important. Because if we don't do that, the voiceless will continue to be the voiceless. If they're not shown that anyone can speak up about this stuff, role models are so important. I just want to know that if any of my listeners at that listen to this podcast are affected by this or know someone going through this, to please step in, to please do something about it. Because you don't need another one of these Larry Nassar situations. You don't need another one of these things that happened to me and my sister. Breaks my heart. You know, when I found out that, you know, I've had friends that were sexually assaulted and abused. And that's sometimes how I've made friends, because we both share this situation that happened to us. And we become friends out of, you know, coming together and getting over, or recovering, I should say, from this. I still have a little PTSD from the actions that were done to me by my dad. It's something that does not affect me on the daily, but every once in a while, if I'm trying to fall asleep, then I remember one night he would drag me across the floor, or threw me on the floor, or hitting me in the car. Things like that. And there was this thing growing up, and something that hasn't really happened a lot because of COVID. People would touch my shoulders, or just touch me, and I'd like turn away from them. The shoulders thing, I would tell them I have sensitive shoulders because, you know, I got plucked with a lot of baseballs as a kid. But the real reason is because, you know, he like moved me by my shoulders or my arm. And then, you know, all my relatives want to hug me all the time without even asking. And I'd be like, I don't really want to, like, I don't want to hug you. It's not like I'm saying it. It's more like, oh, come here, give me a hug. And I'd be like, give him a look. Because I didn't want to say, like, I don't want to be touched. There were times where, like, I'd cry if someone wrapped their arms around me too tight. Because I got scared. I would enter then, you know, those memories would enter my mind and I'd freak the F out. about it. And I don't like being touched because of my dad. So all my family members listening, that is the reason that I don't like hugs. Because it's not that I don't trust you. It's that you were witnessing these things and you didn't say anything, and I was the voiceless. And now it led me to not feeling like I couldn't trust you. And that still kind of feels the way it is. I want to say I'm sorry, but I know that I shouldn't be the one apologizing. Because this is not my fault. What happened to me is not my fault. What happened to my sister is not my fault or her fault. What happened to these gymnasts was not their fault. It's the abuser's fault. I think people forget that sometimes. They did not do this to themselves. They were powerless. These were powerful men. I'm talking about my dad and Larry Nassar. They did this. They decided they were going to do it. And look at what happened. I feel so emotional right now, but I'm trying my best to not cry during my podcast again. This is like a little bit too close to home in terms of topic, like I said earlier, but I felt like it was necessary to be shared. Down below, I'll include links of resources for hotlines and places you could go and ways to report this. And articles you can read about what's happening. I want to say, like, thank you to McKayla, Maroney, Raisman, Simone, Biles, and Maggie Nichols for testifying in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and for talking about the horrible, horrible things that Larry Nassar did. May he rot in prison. And like I said earlier, multiple times too, I wish I could talk to them and give them a hug. What they did was very powerful, and they deserve the world. Everyone that was affected by this guy deserves the world, deserves all the love. Yeah. That's what I wanted to say in today's episode. This is probably the most low energy that I'll ever be on here. Because I'm so emotional right now. I'm really trying my best to hold back. So you can hear the words that I have to say, because this is a podcast. So if I'm crying, you can't hear what I have to say. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Women's Sports Matter podcast. My name is Gianna Belcastro, and I'm your host. If you want to follow me on social media, you can. It's Facebook and Twitter is the same handle, at WSM Podcast. And on Instagram, you can find me at Women's Sports Matter. Got questions, inquiries, just want to reach out, you can DM me on social, or you can send me an email at womensportsmatterpodcast@gmail.com. And again, all this information is in the description down below. Don't send hate to these gymnasts. They don't deserve it. They've been through enough. I just shout out to them. Go follow them on social to see the incredible work that they're doing with this situation. Be a voice for the voiceless. Donate to charities and causes and safe houses for people that go through this stuff. Hopefully next episode will be a little more lighthearted, where I hopefully have an interview that I'm doing. But I want to thank you again for listening to me, listening to what a basic summary of what happened with the testimony for the Senate Judiciary Committee about Larry Nassar, and listening to my story, because it was really hard to do, and I'm probably going to get shit for it from my family, but I didn't give away a lot, so sue me. I don't have any money. I'll see you next week with another episode. But again, thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Women's Sports Matter podcast. I'm your host, Gianna Valcastro, sending love to the 4 gymnasts and everyone that was affected by this guy. Hopefully you guys learned something today. And again, I'm thinking of the over 300 gymnasts that were affected by this man, who was a pedophile and was certainly not doing his job as a doctor. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next week. That's all, folks.